The last selection we just performed was Eagle Squadron by Kenneth J. Alford, featuring our very own Corporal Rebecca Hyde on piccolo. How about another round of applause for her? Pride in our country stems from our love for our neighbors, our friends, and our family. It inspires the bravery necessary to protect America from threats, foreign and domestic, and it allows us to graciously welcome those who seek to uplift our communities. This is our home, constituted by the sacrifices of those before us, the strength of those who lead us, and the promise of those who succeed us. I think you'll recognize our next selection, God Bless America. always faithful. Semper Fidelis has been the motto of the Marine Corps since our 8th Commandant, Colonel Charles McCauley, adopted it in 1883. This eternal message signifies our undying dedication and loyalty to both Corps and country, even long after leaving the service. Semper Fidelis March became the official march of the Marine Corps not long after Sousa composed it in 1888. Sousa claimed it was the best march he had ever written. And well, we're not going to refute that claim. Semper Fidelis. John Clifford Heed, known as the March Wizard, is accredited with more than 60 published marches to his name. This next selection was Heed's first march and remains his most well-known. Even today, we'd like to think that President Reagan would have enjoyed listening to this iconic march, and fitting, in storm and sunshine. The world's premier fighting force, America's away team. As the sound of freedom, no Marine Band performance is complete without the National March of the United States of America, the Stars and Stripes Forever.
Good morning, and welcome to the Reagan Library. For those of you I've not yet had the pleasure of meeting, my name is David Trulio, and I have the privilege of serving as the President and CEO of the Ronald Reagan Presidential Foundation and Institute. Thank you for joining us today as we celebrate what would have been President Reagan's 113th birthday. I would like to begin by recognizing some of the special guests with us today. From the Reagan family, President Reagan's son, Michael. President Reagan's granddaughter, Ashley, and her husband, Joe. Former Congressman Elton Gallegly and his wife, Janice. Former Congresswoman Mimi Walters. The Mayor of Simi Valley, Fred Thomas. Members of the Simi Valley City Council, Mike Judge and Elaine Litzer. We also have with us today the following members of the Board of Trustees of the Ronald Reagan Presidential Foundation and Institute. And please hold your applause. We have Kathy Bush and her daughter Charlotte, former Labor Secretary and Transportation Secretary Elaine Chao, former Special Assistant to President Reagan Peggy Noonan, former U.S. Solicitor General Ted Olson, our board treasurer Ben Sutton, and former Governor Pete Wilson, and the former First Lady of California, Mrs. Gail Wilson. I am so pleased to introduce our chairman of the Board of Trustees of the Ronald Reagan Presidential Foundation and Institute, Fred Ryan. Fred has served President and Mrs. Reagan since 1980, in a variety of roles, including Director of Presidential Appointments and Scheduling in the White House, and as President Reagan's first post-presidency Chief of Staff. Today, in addition to serving as our board chairman, Fred heads our new Center on Civility and Democracy, which was launched last year to address, through actionable solutions, the depolarization and divisions in our society. So with that, ladies and gentlemen, Mr. Fred Ryan.
Thanks, Dave. Thank you, Dave, for that kind introduction. Please be seated. Well, as Dave mentioned, seeing the divisions and the serious threats to our democracy, we've launched this new Center on Civility and Democracy, and it was created to advance principles of civil discourse, collaboration, and respectful dialogue in the political process, on social media, and on university campuses. And as President Reagan once said, democracy is not a fragile flower, still it needs cultivating. And no one lived that more than Ronald Reagan, and perhaps our special keynote speaker today, who shares President Reagan's vision of human rights, freedom, and democracy around the world. So today we gather to celebrate President Reagan's 113th birthday, or as he would have described it, the 74th anniversary of his 39th birthday. But before we begin our program, I'd like to say how delighted and honored we are to have President Lech Walesa with us today. He is here with the executive director of the Lech Walesa Foundation, who happens to also be his son-in-law, Adam Dominski, and two members of his board of directors, David Tilley and Wendell Davis. Thank you all for joining us today. And of course, our very special thanks to all the servicemen and women here today from Camp Pendleton. This is the Reagan Library's 19th year in working with Camp Pendleton to pay tribute to President Reagan on his birthday. And we're honored to have the support of our servicemen and women for such an important military installation. And I know on behalf of everyone here, and I'm sure on behalf of all Americans, thank you for honoring our country. Now, to officially begin our program in honor of the 113th birthday of Ronald Wilson Reagan, please rise for the March On of the Colors, the playing of our national anthem, and the invocation by Chaplain Wayne McCrae, Captain, United States Navy.
Would you please bow your heads with me for prayer? Back in 1984, President Reagan uttered the following: "I believe that faith and religion play a critical role in the political life of our nation and always have, and that the church, and by that I mean all churches, has had a strong influence on the state, and this has worked to our benefit as a nation. Those who created our country, the founding fathers and mothers, understood that there is a divine order which transcends the human order. They saw the state, in fact, as a form of moral order and felt that the bedrock of moral order is religion. Our Father above, today we gather to remember your servant, President Ronald Reagan. We remember the wisdom which recognized that we humans are not the final arbiters of all things, nor are we even the majority member in all things, but grasp the truth that the world is yours and we are actors in it. President Reagan understood that our institutions function better when they seek the bedrock of moral reasoning and identity that comes from a transcendent creator. He understood that moral order and reasoning have their genesis in you, and that the institutions of humankind work best when they allow for and adhere to your moral order. Father, may your moral presence guide our remembrance in this hour. Help us to not only enjoy story and memory, but lead us to understand from lived example and see before us the path that our great nation needs to follow. May we live in a manner worthy of the blessings that we seek from you. Amen.
Thank you, Chaplain McCrae. Please be seated. Well, ladies and gentlemen, it's now my pleasure to welcome a man with a distinguished record of service to our country, including that of being an F-18 pilot at Miramar and then commanding officer at Miramar, multiple deployments and operations around the world, the Commanding General of Marine Corps Base Camp Pendleton, Brigadier General Jason Woodworth.
Thank you, Mr. Ryan, Mr. Trulio, to the incredible staff here at the Reagan Library. I was going to make a joke and thank you for the tent, but I don't think it's raining as much as we thought. But thank you for the tent and all that you do every single day here for the guests in memory of our great president. Good morning, distinguished guests, and thank you for the warm welcome. It's an honor to be here with you today to commemorate the birthday of our 40th President, Ronald Reagan. On behalf of the Marines and sailors of Marine Corps Base Camp Pendleton and the West Coast, thank you for inviting us to participate in honoring this great American. Special welcome to Lech Walesa, a true icon of democracy and fellow defender of freedom. First, I'd like to thank the Marines from Camp Pendleton supporting today's ceremony, including the 1st Marine Division Band, they're warriors and also amazing musicians. The Marine Corps Air Station Camp Pendleton Color Guard, and Marines from Headquarters and Support Battalion serving as today's Honor Guard. Your dedication exemplifies the spirit of service celebrated today, and I truly thank you for representing our institution so well. President Reagan served in a time of uncertainty, with the threat of nuclear warfare at every turn. Elementary school children like myself were taught to duck and cover in their classrooms, while he formulated some of the boldest diplomatic strategies in history, leading our nation, increasing our military might, limiting Soviet expansion, and negotiating with a highly effective and tenacious spirit. He engaged Gorbachev and others with respect, empathy, and conviction through his ability to try to understand their perspective and communicate with them. That conviction focused his vision, and he didn't waver during crisis and embodied executive accountability. When a terrorist bombing took the lives of 220 Marines in Beirut, Lebanon, he said the words, "If there is to be blame, it properly rests here in this office and with this president. I take responsibility for the bad as well as the good." Reagan stood with the American people as a stanchion of hope, an embodiment of leading by example through each of his days as president. He instilled his military with a sense of pride and unwavering leadership, emphasizing that service is a profound investment in the betterment of humankind. And the Reagan Library stands today as a reminder of our history. The permanent exhibits captured here show President Reagan's patriotic spirit, respect for individual liberty, and belief in global democracy. They provide a glimpse of the impact that President Reagan made on our world. And as we leave here today after this ceremony, let us each consider the role we play in preserving the ideals President Reagan held so dear. May we draw inspiration from his leadership and face future challenges with the same courage and conviction that defined his presidency. Thank you very much. Semper Fidelis, and God bless America.
Thank you, General Woodworth, for those inspiring words. Well, we're here today to honor and celebrate the life and legacy of President Reagan. President Reagan stood for freedom and democracy around the world, and he would be so incredibly honored that his fellow freedom fighter, his friend, had traveled all the way from Poland to be in California to celebrate with us today. President Reagan once said that Lech Walesa symbolizes hope, justice, and human dignity to all Americans and to countless millions of people around the world. And here at the Ronald Reagan Presidential Foundation and Institute, we couldn't agree more. In fact, we believe so strongly in his principles, we awarded President Walesa the distinguished Ronald Reagan Freedom Award, not once, but twice, the only two-time recipient of that prestigious award. I'm proud to be able to say that I had the good fortune of being able to travel with President Reagan the first time he met Lech Walesa at the Gdansk shipyard in Poland. This is when Lech Walesa was a rising force for democracy, but before the Polish people had elected him to be their president. Tens of thousands of people had gathered since the earliest hours of the morning at that shipyard to see President Reagan. And it was pouring rain, something we can all relate to here. In fact, it was raining so hard that the decision had to be made to have the two men meet privately inside, and with the hopes that the rain would lighten up enough for them to be able to join the crowd that had gathered for the rally. Well, I have to admit, once inside, awed in the presence of Lech Walesa, I had a photograph of him that I brought, and I had a signing pen that I was hoping he would sign for me as a memento of that historic occasion. But maybe it was the fact that he was new to politics, or maybe it was a language barrier, but I handed him the photo, and he looked at it, and he smiled, and he folded it up, and he put it in his pocket, and he said, "Thank you very much." So I was hoping maybe he would bring that photo back to me today. So following up on the private meeting that President Reagan and Lech Walesa had, they went outside to address the crowd, and not a single person had left. And President Reagan stood before them and tried to thank the crowd, and every time he spoke, the crowd would continuously start to sing a song. And he would wait, and he would start to speak again, and they would come back with the song, and he just didn't get the chance to speak. And he turned to Lech Walesa and he said, "What is this? What are they singing?" And President Walesa turned to him and said, the refrain was a special song of tribute to the American president. What they were saying in Polish was, "May you live 100 years." And although President Reagan lived to be 93, we continue to honor him on the anniversary of his birth. And it seems quite fitting that President Walesa be with us here today to deliver the keynote remarks. And Mr. Walesa, although we are sheltered here from the rain today, I can tell you with pretty high confidence, we would all stand in the pouring rain because of our high sentiments for you. So please join me in welcoming one of the greatest champions of freedom and democracy in our time, the former president of Poland, Lech Walesa.
Dziękuję bardzo.
Thank you very much.
Wolałbym na końcu takie brawo dostać, a nie na początku.
I would rather get all that applause at the end, not at the beginning.
Postaram się zapracować.
I'll try to work for it.
Szanowni Państwo,
Ladies and gentlemen,
we wrześniu skończyłem 80 lat.
I turn 80 in September.
Mój okręt życia dobija do mety.
My life is almost ending.
Postanowiłem podsumować swój żywot i o ciekawych elementach na takich spotkaniach mówić.
So I decided to summarize my life and talk about interesting subjects during such gatherings.
Nie byłem przygotowany do takiej roli, jaką pełniłem w świecie.
I was not prepared to do the job that I was given in this world.
Odniosłem nieprzeciętne sukcesy, tak jak wielu uważa, ja też tak uważam.
And my success in life was tremendous, in my opinion, and in opinion of many others.
Chciałbym przekazać te moje uwagi, abyście wy odnieśli na tych uwagach jeszcze większe sukcesy.
And I would like to give you some remarks, so your success in this world might be even greater than mine.
A możliwości macie większe, jak ja miałem.
Because you have many more and better possibilities here than I ever had.
Jesteście bardziej wykształceni ode mnie
You are more educated than I am.
i pieniędzy macie więcej niż ja miałem.
You have more money than I did.
A więc tylko pozostało wam, żeby się wam chciało chcieć, a wtedy same zwycięstwa będziecie mieć.
So it's the matter of willingness. And if you try hard enough, then the victory will be yours.
Zrozumieć wyzwania czasów, w których przyszło nam żyć.
So you have to understand the challenges of the world that we currently live in.
Ja tylko praktycznie rozumowałem to, co się dzieje wokół mnie.
Because I was able only to understand what was happening around me.
Nie miałem nic przeciwko teorii,
I had nothing against theory,
ale z teorii wyciągałem tylko to, co mi pasuje i to, co się da realizować.
but from theory I only took what worked for me and what I was able to implement.
I na świat patrzyłem zawsze praktycznie.
And I was always very practical when I was looking at the world.
A świat był zawsze podzielony.
And the world was always divided,
Ale rozwijając się, powiększał struktury do tych osiągnięć.
but when the world was developing, it was bringing the structures to the achievements.
Wszystkie państwa na mapie, jakbyście popatrzyli dzisiaj, wszystkie kraje, powiększały się przez wchłanianie słabszych.
Because when you look at the world today, all the countries that were growing were basically incorporating the smaller countries,
Często siłowo.
very often by force.
Do końca XX wieku tak to się działo.
Up until the end of the 20th century, that's the way it was happening.
Ale na koniec XX wieku pojawiła się druga koncepcja powiększania struktur do technologii, jaką zbudowaliśmy.
But at the end of the 19th century, there was a new concept. In order to expand, it was through technology.
I ta druga technologia to powiększanie się przez Unię, przez NATO, przez ONZ, demokratycznie, kto ma ochotę.
And the concept is now that we expand via European Union, via NATO, via United Nations.
I ten stary porządek zaczął burzyć prezydent Reagan.
And the old world order, President Reagan was the one that started to destroy the old world order.
Ja się zastanawiam, czy on podobnie rozumował, że takie są potrzeby rozwojowe, czy tak to się ułożyło.
I'm just wondering if he knew that this is the way the world has to go, or just the way it happened to be so.
A więc wspólnie za Reaganem rozbiliśmy stary porządek świata.
Then together with Reagan, we are able to destroy the old world order.
Ale rozbiliśmy po to, by zbudować nowy, lepszy.
And we overthrew the old order so we can build a better one.
Pierwsze zadanie wykonane, szanowni państwo.
So the first step we did, it's done.
A drugie musimy wydyskutować, jak ono ma wyglądać.
But the second step, we have to discuss how the new world order should look like.
Wy tego może nie zauważacie, bo żyjecie w wielkim kraju.
Maybe you don't see it here because you live in such a big country.
Ale w Europie to widać.
But in Europe, you can see it better.
Ile tam państewek, ile tam granic.
There are so many different small countries. There are so many borders.
2 wojny światowe wyszły z Europy.
2 world wars started in Europe.
A ile rewolucji.
And how many revolutions?
A dzisiaj co? Poznosiliśmy granice,
But today there are no more borders in there.
wyrównaliśmy poziom rozwoju,
The development is pretty much the same.
ale doszliśmy do ściany.
But now we hit a wall.
Aby dalej zwyciężać, zrobić nowy porządek, potrzeba jest państw liderów.
So in order to keep on winning, in order to implement this new world order, we need a country that would be a leader.
Żadne państwo, w tym Stany Zjednoczone, nie poradzi sobie z problemami, które stanęły dzisiaj w świecie.
So no country in the world, not even the United States, can deal with the programs that were introduced in the world today.
Nie poradzą sobie z ekologią,
It's not important for just one country to deal with ecology,
pandemią i
with pandemic,
wieloma innymi sprawami.
and many different other issues.
Możemy zniszczyć życie na tej planecie.
It's possible we could destroy the life on this planet.
Chyba że przeorganizujemy świat, aby rozwiązać, podobać sobie z tymi problemami, poradzić sobie.
Unless we reorganize the world so we can tackle all the issues that challenge the world today.
Dlatego w tej rewolucji
So in this revolution,
sprawy globalne, przygotowanie tych spraw należą do Stanów Zjednoczonych.
so I believe that the globalization, that the preparation for the entire continent of those issues belongs and should belong to the United States of America.
Jeśli się za to nie zabierzecie, nie widzę dobrego rozwoju świata.
Because if you do not lead, then I do not see a good solution in the world.
Sprawy kontynentalne niech biorą wiodące państwa na kontynentach.
Because when it comes to continents, countries that lead certain continents can take care of it.
Jako rewolucjonista wiem, że musimy iść w tym kierunku,
As a revolutionary, I know we have to go towards this direction.
ponieważ we mnie dość dużo zainwestowaliście w różny sposób.
Because you have invested so much in so many different places.
Zdefiniowałem problemy w 3 tematach.
So there are three subjects that when I can put the definition of the issue,
Które musimy wspólnie rozwiązać.
that we have to resolve together.
Pierwszy temat, który jest do rozwiązania.
The first subject.
Świat jest podzielony, kraje, szczególnie w Europie, krzywd sobie wyrządziły dużo.
Well, because the countries in Europe are divided, they did a lot of harm to each other.
Nie da się rozwijać bez wspólnego uzgodnienia fundamentu rozwoju.
So you cannot develop if you cannot create clear fundamentals everybody agrees on.
Co nas ma łączyć, abyśmy zaczęli budować Europę, a jutro globalnie?
So what do we have together that we can build upon?
Kiedy tak stawiam problem na takich spotkaniach,
So when I present this problem in gatherings like this,
pojawiają się 2 pomysły na wspólnotę jutrzejszą.
so there are usually two different concepts.
Połowa świata chce budować na wszelkiego typu wolnościach, wolnym rynku i prawie.
That half of the world wants to build this world on basically law and all kinds of freedoms and liberties.
Jako fundament, który będzie łączył.
And this would be the common ground that would connect us all together.
Druga połowa odpowiada, niedobry pomysł.
The other half says, no, that's not a good idea.
Najpierw powinniśmy uzgodnić wartości, jakimi będziemy się kierować.
First, we have to agree on the values that will lead us.
I potem wolny rynek i prawo.
And then we can talk about the law, and then we can talk about free economy.
Z tego podziału świat nie może iść do przodu.
And this is the problem, this is the division that the world cannot get
Jedni się
out
opierają
from.
przy swojej koncepcji i drugi.
Because one side insists on one thing, the other side insists on the other.
A to nam się uda, drugi problem stoi przed nami.
And then we have a second problem afterwards.
A jaki system ekonomiczny pod tą zjednoczoną Europę, a jutro pod globalizację?
What kind of an economical system can we based upon first for Europe and then the entire world?
Jak wiecie, są 2 wielkie systemy ekonomiczne.
As you know, there are two economical systems,
Komunistyczny i kapitalistyczny.
communism and capitalism.
Teoretycznie lepiej wygląda komunizm.
In theory, the communism looks better on paper.
Stąd wielu młodych ludzi nabiera się na popieranie komunizmu na Zachodzie.
That's why so many people feel attracted to it.
Bo tam ładnie brzmi, sprawiedliwości, równości, ładnie są głoszone.
Well, that sounds very nice, you know, justice, equality, this, that, and the other.
To się może podobać.
Yeah, that sounds nice.
Tylko oni nie wiedzą o tym, że tego się nie da zrealizować.
But what the young people do not realize, you cannot implement
Nigdzie
that.
się nie udało i nie uda. Długo jeszcze się nie uda.
It never work, it will never work.
Dlatego proponuję, odrzućcie ten pomysł z komunizmem ekonomicznym.
So please throw away the idea of a communistic system.
Zostaje kapitalistyczna ekonomia.
So what we have left
No,
is free economy,
ale
capitalism.
mała uwaga.
But small remark,
Kapitalizm to rywalizacja,
because capitalism means there is competition.
często nieuczciwa.
Sometimes it's not fair.
Ona powoduje, że ktoś nazwał wyścig szczurów między państwami.
Sometimes they say it's a rat race between countries.
Ona powoduje, że bezrobocie się tworzy, no bo kto będzie patrzył na nieudaczników.
Well, sometimes there is unemployment because nobody wants to help the losers.
Ten nowy kapitalizm
But the new
musi
capitalism,
zostawić gospodarkę wolnorynkową,
you have to have a free economy.
a wszystko inne inaczej ustawić.
And the other issues could be managed in a different manner.
A bezrobotnych odszukać i do roboty zagonić.
And the unemployed should be found and put to work.
Oczywiście opłacalnej, mądrej.
But of course, good jobs.
W starym wyścigu nie dało się tego zrobić w kapitalizmie.
In the old capitalism, that was not possible.
Kiedy robimy kontynenty i globalizację, jest to możliwe.
But now that we are all connecting together, the continents and globalization, it's all possible.
I trzeci problem zdefiniowałem na dzisiejsze czasy.
And there is a third issue in our times today.
Jak sobie poradzić z demagogią, populizmem i oszustwami polityków w tej skali większej?
How do we deal with demagogues? How do we deal with people who cheat, who are dishonest?
Przy pamiętaniu o tym, że do końca XX wieku
You have to remember that up until the end of the 20th century,
to narody wypierały się, nie przyznawały, ale w świadomości społecznej miały Pana Boga.
because even though nationalities and countries wouldn't admit, everybody had God in their consciousness.
On się różnie nazywał,
They called God different names,
ale w świadomości społecznej był.
but it was always in the consciousness of a society.
Odeszliśmy od tego.
But we left it. We left that idea.
Baliśmy się komuny Związku Sowieckiego.
We were afraid of communism. We were afraid of the Soviet Union.
Poradziliśmy sobie z tym.
But we took care of that.
Pozostaje pytanie,
So now the question remains.
jak utrzymać narody, które nie mają żadnych hamulców, żadnych strachów?
So how do we keep nations? How do we keep the order in this world if you have no fear, if you have no stop sign?
To są problemy, które ja, rewolucjonista, zauważam
These are the issues that I can see.
i chciałbym, żebyście wy, wiodący kraj w świecie, pomyśleli o tym.
So I would like for you, the leader of the world, to think about that.
I też, żebyście zauważyli,
And also to notice
że wszystkie struktury,
that all
partie
structures
polityczne na dzisiejsze czasy ze starego systemu nie pasują.
from the old systems, the old structures from the old systems do not fit into the modern world.
Partie lewicowe są mają programy bardziej prawicowe jak prawicowe.
Because today, some of the left parties have more right-wing programs than the right-wing
A
parties.
najciekawiej wyglądają partie chrześcijańskie.
But the most interesting parties are the Christian parties.
Krzyczą chrześcijańskie. Krzyczą, że są chrześcijańskie.
They are yelling that they are Christians,
A tam nie ma ani jednego wierzącego.
but you do not have one person, one man of faith in there.
To w starym czasie mogło to być.
In the old days, yeah, that worked.
Tylko jedną strukturę mamy ze starego porządku pasujące na dzisiejsze czasy.
There is only one structure that works from the old days in today's world.
Tylko przepisy o ruchu drogowym.
Traffic laws.
A tak świat wygląda, jakbyśmy zdjęli znaki i przepisy z ulic.
But today, our political arena looks as if almost we took all the stop signs and all the street signs down.
Stara koncepcja przy pomocy prezydenta Reagana upadła.
Because the old concept that we have with the help of President Reagan was overthrown.
Technologia, którą zbudowaliśmy, wymaga powiększania struktur.
So the technology that we built demands that we expand our structures.
Wielu mi mówi, że nam się nie uda porozumieć.
A lot of people are telling me that we won't be unable to communicate with each other.
Taka technologia 5 razy na tym świecie była.
Because the technology was in this world for like 5 times.
A nawet wyższa, bo piramidy budowano, więc wiele inne rzeczy,
We had even better technology. I mean, we did have in the past even pyramids and other technology.
których my nie jesteśmy w stanie zbudować.
And today we are not able to build that.
I to zostało zniszczone.
And that was destroyed.
Pytanie jest, czy nasze pokolenie pójdzie w ich ślady, też zniszczy, czy jednak przejdziemy to?
So the question is, are we going to get destroyed as well as a civilization, or are we going to move forward?
Jeśli zniszczymy, jeśli nie weźmiemy za robotę już teraz,
Because if we do not start the work right here, right now,
to skończymy żywot na tym planecie, parę setleci nie będzie tu życia.
the life on this planet will end.
przyślą nam Adama i Ewę i od nowa zaczniemy.
Adam and Eve will come back and we'll start from the beginning.
Szanowni Państwo, wybaczcie mi, ja wiem, że to nie jest ta akademia, nie to spotkanie na takie tematy.
I know, forgive me. I know this is not the place and time for this type of subjects.
Ale ja czuję się zobowiązany w imię zainwestowania we mnie, by mówić o tym, by odnieść sukces.
But I feel responsible. I think this is my responsibility to talk about it so you can succeed.
To tyle, co chciałem Państwu powiedzieć. Dziękuję za to, że wysłuchaliście mnie.
Well, that's all I wanted to say. Thank you very much for listening to me.
Well, thank you, President Walesa, for those great insights and reflections. The positions you held, the close relationship you had with President Reagan give you a truly unique perspective on Ronald Reagan and his enduring legacy. And may I say on behalf of all of us, Obush zu stolat. May you live 100 years. Now, may I ask everyone to please rise for the laying of the wreath and honors to President Reagan. The President of the United States has directed that a presidential wreath be laid at the resting place of all former presidents on the anniversary of their birth. Brigadier General Jason G. Woodworth, Commanding General of Camp Pendleton, California, is designated to place a wreath at the tomb of the 40th President of the United States, Ronald Wilson Reagan, on 6 February 2024, in honor of the 113th anniversary of his birth and in tribute to his distinguished service to a grateful nation. ask everyone to remain standing for the retiring of the colors and the conclusion of the ceremony with Anchors Aweigh and the Marines hymn. This concludes the ceremony. Birthday cake will be served in the Presidential Learning Center. You don't have to blow out 113 candles to have a piece of it. But thank you all for joining us.